Hello everyone. In this video, I am going to show you my React environment and how I set up my project. So I'm using VS Code as my editor, and I'm also using Chrome as my browser. I do have an extension installed. It's called React Developer Tools. And what it does, it gives you a better understanding of your components and properties and whatnot. And we are going to take a look at them later on, but it's really helpful. And if you are following this tutorial, I highly recommend installing it. So first thing you need to do is to check if you have Node installed on your system before creating your React project, as React depends on Node.js. So first thing you need to do is to open a terminal. VS Code does have a terminal inside it, so you can just start typing and say node-v, which is going to give you your Node version. So anything above 5.6 is good. And if you don't have Node installed, I do have a link to the Node.js website in my post, so you can check that section. After you're getting your Node version and making sure you're okay, you can start typing npx, which is a package runner, and our package would be create React app. And then I'm going to name my project, which is City Pizzeria for this project. And by the way, before typing npx create, make sure you're in the directory that you want to create your project. So I want my project to be in my C drive. So then I'm going to hit enter. This process is going to take like a few minutes before it completes and create your project for you. So I'm going to mute myself and speed up the video and come back when the project is created. Okay, now that our project is created, if you get this message, happy hacking, it means you're good to go. So next thing we're going to do is we are going to redirect to our project, and we are going to start React Live Server. React comes with a live server, and to run it, you just need to type npm start. So cd to City Pizzeria and npm start to start the live server. Okay, as you can see, I have my live server going in my Chrome, and this is the default page that React comes with. The next thing I'm going to do is open up the project folder and show you the structure of this project. So as you can see, I have the project folder open, and there are a few files that we need to know about here. One is in public folder. It's called index.html. This is the HTML file that our browser is going to see. And the only thing it has, as you can see, it doesn't have much. The only thing it does have is a div with the ID of root. And this is where all our React components is going to be injected. Now, the next file that I'm going to take a look at, it's called index.js. I'm going to explain it in more detail what's going on here, but for now, do know that everything that React does is rendering all your components. For example, in here, app is a component. So this one is a component, and it's rendering inside a div with the ID of root. So if I go back to my index.html, you can see that everything that we do have in our React is going to be injected here. And finally, we do have app.js. As we saw in the index.js here, this is our only component that is being rendered for now. And if I take a look at here, it's a function that's returning a HTML structure to index.js. And I'm going to explain what's going on, and we are going to change this later on. So first thing I'm going to do is to get rid of everything inside my app component. And if I do that, you can see here that I'm getting an error here. That's because a component has to return something. So for example, a div. Now, as you can see, my div is empty and it doesn't show anything. But if I, for example, write hello world, and now it's getting rendered, and as you can see, I'm getting hello world here. it does come with a styling. There is a CSS file here. It's called app.css, and we don't honestly need that, so we can get rid of it. And so I'm going to get rid of these imports as well. So now let's create our own component. So what I'm going to do is create a new folder inside my source folder, and I'm going to name it components. And inside my components, I'm going to create a new file. It's going to be called header.js. And this is where I'm going to create my navigation bar for our project. Now, there are a few ways to create our components. One popular way is to create a function and return our JSX. Another way, which is more popular right now, is to use arrow functions. And to do that, we need to declare a const variable. So const variable, and it's going to be our header. And this would be equal to an arrow function. Now, if you can't recall arrow functions, I do have a section about them in my blog, so you can check that section out. So here we are going to return our JSX just like our root component. But we do need another piece, which is export, default, and our component, which enables our component to be rendered. Now that we do have the structure of our component, we can start creating our elements. So since this would be a navigation bar, I'm going to start by creating a nav element, and inside our nav element, I'm going to create another div, and inside this div, I'm going to create another list, and let's create like three items, and I'm going to call them, for example, home, and the next one I'm going to call it deals, and the last one would be our basket. So, but as you can see, nothing is being rendered in our browser. Now, the reason our header component is not getting rendered and we can see it in our browser, it's because now if you see here, if I go back to our root component, we only still rendering this h1. So what I'm going to do is to get rid of this h1, and I am going to first import our header.js into our app.js. So I'm going to import our header component into our root component, which is just like importing in Java. So as you can see, I am going to get an error here. It's temporary, don't worry. So I'm going to call it header, and it's going to be from components and header. Okay. So what I can do here is I can simply write header inside a tag, and as you can see, I get my unordered list, which is in my header.js, in my header component. So this is how components can be combined together to create more complex interface. Now, there are a few ways to style your components and your elements. One simple way is just to use an inline styling, just like any other HTML code. So you can just say style equal, but you need double curly braces here since you are in a JavaScript file. But inside your double curly braces, you can just use any CSS code. For example, I'm going to change the color to red, and I'm going to save my file. And as you can see, the color of home is changed to red. Now, another way to style your elements is to use a CSS file. So as you can see here, I created a new CSS file called navbar.css. And basically, it's just giving divs an 80% body width and a background color. So what I can do here inside my header component, I can import my CSS file. So I can say navbar.css, and if I save it, yeah, the styling get applied to my file. Now, there are other ways to style your components, bootstrapping one of them, and there are other external libraries that you can use to style your component and elements inside them, but I'm not going to explain them. I'm just going to use Bootstrap for the rest of this project, but do know that there are other ways to style your components. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to finish creating my header component, but I'm going to speed up my video since creating HTML is not the point of this blog or this video. So as you can see here, I finished creating and styling my navigation bar. I did end up installing Bootstrap. I'm familiar with Bootstrap, it's easier for me, but you can do your own styling or use an external library, as I mentioned. I do have my own CSS file here. It's called navbar, and I ended up creating another CSS file for my root component. I created a folder called assets in my source folder. It's not a bad idea to manage all your assets like CSS, JavaScript, or images that you're going to import to your document in a folder. So another component that I'm going to create here is going to be called menu.js. And what I'm going to do again, I'm going to speed up my video and be right back when I finish creating my component. So I finished creating the menu component, and again, I use Bootstrap classes, and I do have my own styling, and it's just a HTML structure. Now I'm going to again import it into our root component. So I'm going to say menu, and VS Code is nice enough to automatically import this component for me. And as you can see, my component is being rendered. And finally, I'm going to create another component. I'm going to call it item. And this would be basically our menu items. Again, I'm going to speed up my video and be back when I finish creating this component as well. Okay, so I finished creating my items component, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to import it inside my menu component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to my menu component and just add item. And I also have to import item from item, yeah. And let's save it. Let's reload. Okay. Now you can see my component, my item component here. So we have yet to see React's power and how it can help us to create interfaces. So far, we just created 3 components, nested them inside each other to create this simple menu. But let's say this pizza place has 6 pizza menus, so 6 pizza items, right? So they need this code to be repeated 6 times. If it was just vanilla JavaScript or HTML, we needed to copy this code 6 times and give it different name and description each time. But with React, what we can do is we can simply copy and paste this component. So now you can understand the reusability part of React components. So this is a small building block that we can nest into our menu to create as many items as we want. So let's say we need 6 items here. So 3, 4, 5, 6, done. Now let's take this concept one step further, and let's say we do have another menu and it's for sides or drinks. So what I can do, I can go to my root component, the app.js, and start copying my menu. So let's say the second menu would be for my side, and the last one would be for my drinks. But now we do have a problem here. Since these components are a copy of each other, they are showing the same thing, and that's not what we want. We want different content in each one of them, and that's what we are going to address next. Now, let's take another look at our item component and see how we managed to insert this image into our element. So what I could have done, I could have used just this address inside my source here as normal in any HTML code. But what I did was I import. So basically you can import anything you want into your container. So I imported this image and gave it a name, and now this is a variable. I can use this variable wherever I want. I can reuse it as many times as I want. It's faster, easier, and it reduces mistakes. So whenever you want to pass something as a variable to your JSX, you can put it inside a set of curly braces. So now that we know how to pass variables into our code, let's talk about another concept of React, which is called props. And the way I like to think about props and the way I understand it, well, props works very similar to how we can pass variables in our Java methods, right? So in Java, we can pass a string or an integer or a boolean or whatever, an array list to another method for processing or for displaying it. And we do have the same thing in React, and it's called props. So by passing props, we can pass an argument to our component. Okay, so let's head back to our root component, and let's pass a prop to our header, to our navigation, and let's call it name, and give it a value of city Caesarea. Okay, so now we are passing this prop to our header component. So let's see our header component. Now we can get our props inside this parentheses that we do have in our arrow function. So if I say name here, not class name, which is what we defined here, this name is now imported here, and I can simply change this to name, and when I save it, it's going to show you the same thing. But now I can just change the name of my pizza place easily. So I can call it the best pizza ever. So now that we know how to pass props into our components, let's change the name of our menus. So the first one should be pizzas, the next one should be sides, and finally it should be drinks. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pass a name and call it pizza, right? And I'm just going to copy paste this here and here. For this, I'm going to name it to sides and drinks. And as you can see, it gets very fast all of a sudden, developing with React. Now I can receive my name in my menu component, and instead of this pizzas here, which is static, I can just use name variable, which I pass to my component, and boom. As you can see, I do have pizza, maybe pizzas, and yeah, pizza, sides, and drinks, all done in just a second. All right, so now let's change the description of our pizza menu as well. So let's create another prop, call it description, for example. We can pass as many props as we want. So for this one, I'm going to say 50 pizzas made with fresh ingredients. Yeah, and save it. Now I'm going to head back to my menu, and I'm going to get the description as well. Description here, and instead of this code that I generated, I can simply paste description. And if I save my code, you can see that the description for our pizzas changed. But if we look at the sides or drinks, they are empty. since we're not passing any prop with a name description to our second or third menu. So now that we gave our menus a name and a description, let's do the similar thing for our items as well. So let's give our first item a name, and in this case, I'm going to call it barbecue chicken, and let's give it a description as well. So let's say barbecue sauce with seasoned grilled chicken, for example, and we do have a price. So when we need to pass the float or integer, we have to use curly braces. So I'm going to pass like 12.50 here, and we also have an image, right? So what I'm going to do here again, I'm going to go back to my items item component, and I'm going to cut this import from here, and I'm going to paste it down here. So let's paste it like this. So now I can pass it the barbecue pizza as an image. Now so the reason I'm getting this error is because we don't have this variable here anymore. So I'm going to get rid of this for a second to this also as well to make maybe give our source an empty, and let's reload. Okay, now we're not getting any errors. So let's say we are passing the name and the description, the image, and the price, right? And for the source, I'm going to use image. And boom, as you can see, the image is the image is imported here. For the name, I can just say name. For the description, I can just simply say description. And for the price, let's make it a price variable. Okay, so as you can see, I changed my first component. And I can do the same thing with every single one of these components. So I did manage to give each and every item a name, description, price, and image. And this is the final product that you can see in my live server. So as you can see, each item has its own picture, name, and description, plus price. Although they are the same components, they do have different variables. Now, this is as far as I'm going for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something new. I try to keep it simple. I'm still learning React myself. I'm a novice. I'm a beginner as well. But it's not that hard. Once you get into it, you are going to enjoy it. So hopefully you guys can do it yourself. I do have some instruction in my blog if you do want to start your own project. And I do have a video as well on how to create your own project as well. So thank you guys, and see you on the next post.